For centuries, the rise and fall of empires was seen as chaos, an unpredictable storm of wars, kings, revolutions, assassinations, or economic crises. Every historian had their theory, every nation blamed a different event. But when you zoom out far enough across half a millennium, across continents, across political systems, something astonishing emerges. A pattern, not a myth, not a metaphor, a structural, measurable, seven-stage sequence that every global empire has followed from dominance to collapse. Spain in the 1600s, Britain in the early 1900s, the Soviet Union in the late 20th century, different cultures, different technologies, different ideologies, yet they all collapsed through the same mechanism, in the same order, driven by the same internal forces. This seven-stage sequence is not prophecy. It is behavioral inevitability, a chain reaction triggered each time an empire reaches peak dominance. When an empire becomes too strong militarily, it expands beyond what its economy can sustain. When its currency becomes the world's backbone, it begins to erode that privilege through when its debt grows faster than its productivity, mathematics not enemies becomes its executioner. The collapse sequence is as follows: military overextension, expansion beyond economic capacity, currency debasement, printing money to fund interests, wars, and political promises, debt spiral, borrowing to pay previous borrowing, loss of productive capacity, outsourcing industry, hollowing out the real economy, social decay, polarization, internal distrust, collapsing institutions, loss of reserve currency status, global confidence evaporates, final collapse, fragmentation, political transformation, or economic breakdown. Every empire enters stage 1 because its early victories convince its expansion is destiny. Every empire enters stage 2 because growth becomes more important than stability. Every empire enters stage 3 because borrowing becomes the easiest solution. Every empire enters stage 4 because prosperity blinds leaders to declining foundations. Every empire enters stage 5 because polarization emerges from inequality, distrust, and national exhaustion. By the time stage 6 begins, collapse is no longer avoidable. The remaining question is speed. Some collapses take decades. Some take years. Some take months. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it ceased to exist in 900 days. When Britain lost the pound's reserve status, its empire dissolved in less than a generation. Spain, once the richest global power, spent its way into economic ruin so deep it never returned to superpower status. And today, a modern empire stands at stage 5. The United States, a nation that has completed every step Spain, Britain, and the USSR once took almost precisely, almost mechanically, as if guided by the same invisible formula. The rest of this documentary uncovers how each empire triggered its own downfall, not through invasion, not through conquest, but through predictable decisions that once seemed harmless. To understand the present, we must revisit the first empire that walked the seven-step path most clearly. Spain, the empire destroyed not by enemies, but by unimaginable wealth. In the late 1500s, Spain stood unmatched. Its empire stretched across continents, from Europe to the Americas. Its treasure fleets returned year after year with unimaginable wealth. Tons of silver mined from the New World. Spain possessed so much silver that global prices distorted around it. Economists today estimate that Spain controlled more than 80% of the world's silver supply at the peak of its empire. But beneath this golden glow, the collapse sequence had already begun. Stage 1. Military overextension. Spain was wealthy, powerful and endlessly at war. The empire fought expensive campaigns across Europe, the Dutch revolt, wars against France, Ottoman conflicts, and the costly maintenance of global colonies. Silver flowed in, but armies consumed it faster than ships could deliver it. Spain's military became a machine too large to sustain. And as expenses ballooned, Spain reached for the easiest solution. Stage 2. Currency debasement. Silver coins were minted with less purity. Copper was mixed into currency. Inflation began surging. Prices doubled, then tripled. Workers demanded higher wages. Merchants raised prices. Instability spread. Ironically, the very silver that made Spain rich made its currency unstable. Stage 3. The debt spiral. To keep the empire alive, Spain borrowed heavily, using future silver shipments as collateral. But storms, pirates, and delays meant fleet arrivals were unpredictable. When payments came due and silver was late, Spain had no choice but to default. Not once, not twice, but 4 times in under a century. Foreign banks raised interest rates or refused credit altogether. The Spanish treasury became a hostage to debt. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. Why build factories when silver could buy everything? Spain outsourced nearly all manufacturing to Northern Europe. Foreigners built Spain's weapons, ships, textiles, and tools. Spanish industry evaporated. When silver began losing value, Spain discovered something terrifying. It no longer produced anything the world needed. Stage 5 to 7. Decay, devaluation, decline, inequality rose. Social unrest spread. The government lost credibility. Revolts erupted. The empire fragmented. Between 1590 and 1670, the richest empire on earth became a hollow shell, ruined not by poverty, but by spectacular abundance, mismanaged at every step. Spain became the world's first warning. Wealth can accelerate collapse when leadership believes resources are infinite. Next came an empire very different from Spain: industrial Britain, the greatest naval power in history. Yet even it was not immune to the 7-stage sequence. Britain entered the 20th century ruling a quarter of the world. The sun famously never set on its empire. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency. London was the heart of global finance. But strength hid fragility. Britain, the slow collapse of an empire built by industry. Stage 1. Military overextension. World War I drained Britain's treasury like nothing before. Military costs skyrocketed. Debt exploded. Barely a generation later, World War II demanded even more ships, more soldiers, more loans. By the war's end, Britain owed more than it could ever repay. Stage 2 and 3, currency debasement and debt spiral. To stay afloat, Britain printed money, abandoned the gold standard, and relied on US financing. Inflation rose, confidence in the pound eroded. Stage 6, loss of reserve currency status. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, global financial leadership shifted to the US once the pound lost reserve status. The empire could no longer maintain its global holdings. One by one, colonies gained independence. By 1954, the global empire was effectively gone. Britain didn't fall violently, it fell mathematically. The Soviet Union, rapid collapse of a military giant after World War II. The USSR emerged as a superpower, rivaling the US. Its military strength was unmatched. Its territory vast, its ideology powerful. But the collapse sequence was already active. Stage 1, military overextension, massive Cold War spending, drained resources, wars, proxy conflicts, Afghanistan, each added pressure. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity, factories were outdated. Shortages common. Production statistics inflated. Coal, steel, and machinery lagged behind the West. Stage 5, social decay. Corruption spread. People lost trust in the system. National republics demanded autonomy. Once economic strain peaked, the Soviet Union unraveled at astonishing speed. Collapsed completely in 900 days. Two very different systems, capitalist Britain and communist USSR, yet both fell through the same structural stages. Which brings us to the world's modern superpower. The United States today stands at stage 5. Social decay. The point where previous empires became unable to reverse decline. Political polarization. Declining trust in institutions. Record national debt. Offshored manufacturing. Currency inflation. Geopolitical overcommitment. The signs mirror the past with uncomfortable precision. The debt machine, $36 trillion, total debt, $2 trillion, added yearly, over $1 trillion in annual interest. This is not a political issue. It is mathematical inevitability. The dollar's challenge, stage 6, incoming for decades. The dollar has been the global reserve currency. This gave the US the privilege to print money with minimal consequence. But nations worldwide have begun shifting, buying gold, reducing dollar reserves, trading outside the dollar system, forming alternative economic blocs. These are the earliest signals of stage 6. And history is clear. No empire reaching stage 6 has ever avoided stage 7. Where the pattern leads, empires do not collapse because the pattern predicts doom. They collapse because leaders refuse to change when the pattern warns them. History does not repeat because fate demands it, it repeats because human behavior does. The United States still has immense power, immense innovation, immense influence. But the 7-stage sequence does not care about potential. It cares about structure. The question is no longer if the sequence continues, but how quickly. Understanding this pattern is not about fear, it is about preparation. Because once stage 6 begins, the end moves faster than anyone expects.